If you read the title, you're going to know that this is going to be talking about communism, and I would hope that I could have a good faith uh, approach to this and others as well. Uh, and I've been writing this for a little while now, and I was just going to read the beginning of my little treatment about why I don't like communism, why I think it's going to be the destruction of the world at this point, and why I think that you should look through all the different pieces and different places in which it is found and help to root it out. Now, I'm going to read a little bit of the beginning here, which is the mission. The main mission of this writing is to counter the ideas and cult of personality from the Communist Manifesto. That includes the people who believe in it to this day, and their ideas, not necessarily just directly from the Communist Manifesto and Karl Marx and Engels. This is also to address ways to fight tyranny and to improve the lives of anyone who is to read this. And I'm going to start off with some assumptions which I have and want of you, which is to say, it is assumed that if you're reading this, that you have knowledge of communism and its effects. It also assumes you're not politically possessed, which is a Jungian term, which is to say, sort of like a group identity or group think, which is my group is the best and your out group is not, and I will do anything for my group, even if it is not correct. I need, or if you are to have an open faith to interact with this sort of thing, it would be best if you're not ideologically motivated, which is, oh, I'm a liberal and I believe such and such things, or in anything that happens in my group, I must stand by it no matter what happens, right? Which is to go into every argument with an open faith and ideas. All right? And you're not politically possessed, and you can see outside of your party's, groups, identities, and perspectives. To read with any of these, or to try to read with any of these without complete control of yourself will lead to an unpleasant reading experience, and you cannot be reached by me. I am bearing myself to you. I would hope that you can as well. I want you to see me, read my words as they come out of my mouth, not as an enemy or someone to be debunked, hated, or worshipped. I would like to be seen for what I am, a man. I'm flawed. I enjoy the world. People enjoy my company. I have interests. I have hobbies. I have dreams. I have hopes. I love. I live. And I will die. Thank you. And now I'm going to actually get into my points about what I think about communism and why it's a problem. So first, I'll start off here. The problem with communism has, in my view, become self-evident. Some basic assumptions and core issues are the reason as to why I author this writing, or book. I guess it'll be a book. These issues are diametrically opposed to my views of life and my society. Some of these problems include, number one, to secure the utopia, power must be centralized and then spread to the working class. I will later explain why each of these points are an issue. Number two, people are categorized and put into groups and group identities, often based on oppression. And then number three, the categorization of certain groups as enemies sets up the violent revolution needed for their utopia. So, with each of these, they create a multitude of problems, which I will later get into if this or as I continue this series. Now, the main issue with consolidation of power is corruption. Based on the amount of power necessary to control and govern over people's actions, the government or controlling party would need to be massive. The power given would require an enormous amount of trust in the state or party group in order to ensure this. Individual known as Foch had recently said this in a live stream. He's a famous communist, anarcho-communist, I believe he says. And he had stated that in order to reach a state of anarchy, we need to give more power to the government, which seems shockingly hypocritical and backwards to his belief system, but it actually makes sense under the purpose that they're going for, which is also hypocritical and doesn't make any sense, as I'll continue. But just to know that a lot of these people think that a lot of thinkers, socialist and communist thinkers, believe that the problems with the society should be dealt with at a state or party level, that the state should have the power to correct certain issues that they see fit. And let me get back to this. The party or government would therefore oversee taking control of every facet of human life under its reach, from the smallest actions to the largest. The equity of the human being will be monitored, will have to be monitored in order for the system to function. The true communists believe that all should be equal, from the production of labor to the outcomes of artistic endeavors, which is very important. Now just imagine the amount of trust and absolute power you would have to put into a system in order for it to have control and monitoring of every single individual in the society. Rather a area. A lot of these thinkers have this, and I've had this discussion before with other communists, which was a lot of them don't think that a state can exist under communism. Meanwhile, others do think that it does. So there's a lot of contention between the two groups about what there is to be. And if you're actually to read the Communist Manifesto, it's supposed to talk about a revolution that takes over the state, and then the workers are supposed to become the dictators of the state. But I'll continue onward. The absolute control of the state needs to be absolute, which would ultimately lead to tyranny by human nature. The power to corrupt any groups at the top with the control needed to take over the governments in the revolution. This part of the process would claim countless lives, which is something that we've seen constantly throughout history, which is that they need the revolution, which is often violent. So if you don't want to die, probably you don't want that. If you don't want to kill anybody, you probably don't want that. And second part, which would be the revolution, which would I lost my train of thought. Yeah, the corruption. If you were to give all your power, which is what is necessary for this to be able to function, to the state, then how can it not become corrupted by the weight of its own power? You cannot achieve your communist end by constantly creating this puffed up, massive super government and then expect it to function, which is why you can't do that. So, if you are a communist, bare minimum, don't push for more government control and more government focus just by the bare minimum of the fact that it's been constantly shown throughout history that it wasn't going to work. And that's your own point. Many communists will put forth the fact that, oh, Maoist China, that's not true communism. Oh, Stalinist, that's not true communism. Pol Pot, the list goes on. And what they fail to realize is both, number one, that they're arrogant enough to believe that they could do anything different, and number two, which is that all the state power isn't going to lead them to the conclusion that they want if they consistently keep pushing for more state power. And I'll continue on after I got off that tangent. It'll corrupt those on top. With that being said, the result of communism can never be taken or attempted without considerable tyranny. This is obvious from the countless examples of fallen states that have attempted communism. As the believers state, that wasn't real communism, which in a sense is true because it can't be achieved without first hitting tyranny, to the point at which it cannot be sustained. The people involved need to fight against communist systems to save themselves. Now, in most of any case, you can find a way in which the government has overreached and violated the rights of others. In the black community, this has been a historical fact, with crimes against humanity being committed by the CIA. Drugs introduced to the streets, the Tuskegee experiments, and government mistreatment. With that being known, and these are being known facts, which have been consistently pushed throughout the world, as well as many other Native American tragedies, Ruby Ridge, and all sorts of other disturbing tragedies. I don't know if you can hear that, but please ignore that. Sorry. How can you possibly trust the government of the United States? How could you possibly trust the government of Britain, or the UK rather? How could you possibly trust any of these governments to be able to function the way that you want them to, just because you give them more power and trust? Just keep shoving it towards them, give them more and more and more for them to do what you want. It's impractical. It doesn't work. The government system is to rule over you, which is not the system that I want. But the fact is, they've shown repeatedly, let me get back to it. Governments have shown repeatedly that is like all other systems with people in it. It can be corrupted and use its power for its own means to prolong itself. Its goals are its own concern, and given it its infinite resources and monopoly on violence, they cannot be held accountable in the way the founding fathers of the United States wanted. The government of the United States at least has checks and balances to help limit its growth and power. However, this has clearly failed in its attempts to limit the issues that are being seen today, which is something else that you could talk about, which is the tree of tyranny needs to be washed with blood. I'll get back to this reading. The government of the the influence of communism in the state, education, and influencers has led to continuing beliefs that the issues of the society need to be solved by the government, with or without the knowledge that doing so increases the power of that government. The state is being increased in power to solve issues it usually started, and in doing so, increase the people's dependence on the government, which continues the cycle. And now I'm going to get into an example here. One such example would be that of an increased livable wage. By increasing a wage and creating a universal wage, we are paving the way to our slavery. Some would like to argue that conservatives and Republicans are heartless for not wanting people to be paid enough to eat. Now, that is not the reason for the concern. You can think that, but the concern is that what would happen if the government would be able to tax everyone a massive amount of money in order for them to pay you back some of that in a wage and further their aims for using that power. The amount of money required to pay a reasonable amount to any group of people would be enormous. The tax would then go directly to the people. The rich are smart enough to shelter their money. Meanwhile, the middle class and poor will take the brunt of that attack from the government. This action will cripple the United States as unprecedented amounts of money will have to be generated for others. Another true concern is that if given the power, the government can use this power over the people, being able to dish out money or not, as it requires a robust system that doesn't currently exist. Imagine that. Imagine a government system that can decide whether or not you deserve or need a livable wage, right? Just for 1 second, if you are opposed to my sort of view on this, can you imagine what it would mean for a government to effectively starve out someone for what they've done to the government? Such things have already happened, such as, I know, by the way, I don't care if you do not agree with the politics or the things that Alex Jones has said, but having bank accounts shut down because of what you said is a very shocking precedence to be set, such as Jordan Peterson as well. I don't care if you do not agree with his politics. I'm talking about the principle which caused what I'm about to say, which is that his email service was shut down completely for him. He could not produce emails and he couldn't log into certain applications based on that. Which is to say, if this becomes a trend to continue into the future, your freedoms in your life is to be forfeit at that point, if you are not to toe the lines of the party, which is why you should not give the power to the state. If you increase the power of the state, they can use it against you. So, if you give them the power to dish out money to everybody, you're giving them the power to tax everybody, you're giving them the power to choose and to be the judge of who receives that money. You're also giving them the power to do whatever they want with that money after they taxed it from you. Who knows if they would even use it towards the goal of universal basic income. Now, I will get back to what I've been reading. As of the writings of this, the Canadian government had taken and shut down many bank accounts connected to political issues. They didn't deem correct those political issues. This is a horrible reality that those in charge at the top can make situations to bend to their opponent, make situations where their opponents have to bend to their will. Politicians have continued to further their own rule since the beginning of civilization. However, the ideas of Marx have promised an eventual heaven on earth if this power is transferred to the government or parties to solve the issue of inequality and inequity. Both issues will result in monstrous consequences, as the inequity means the outcome of events. The outcomes of what people will do will have to be equaled. In that sense, no one can excel or do greater than others. The government required would have to have absolute power in order to maintain its control to deal with every level of production as an equal endeavor, every level of human being, every level of government employee, every level of state power wouldn't be overlooked. And that would be the end of the beginning of my writings here. I've already gotten to 20 pages so far and 10,000 words. And if you're interested, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe. And if you'd like to hear more about my observations, warnings, tips, and concerns over the degradation of the United States, please give it a like and a share. And thank you.